What's up, everybody? This is Mike with Streamline Canine, and in this video we're going to go over the beginnings of engagement. First, let's talk a little bit about what engagement is exactly. And engagement is a word that dog trainers use to describe the dog's willingness to give attention to the handler, especially in more distracting environments or more realistic environments. A dog with really bad engagement or really poor engagement will get distracted by nearly everything, even if there's very little or nothing going on. And they almost act as if the owner doesn't exist or the handler doesn't exist. They're kind of off in their own world doing their own thing, and they could care less about the owner and what they're doing. A dog with really good engagement could be surrounded by a bunch of crazy distractions. They could have people playing ball next to them. They could have other dogs around them. They could have other people being active in some way, bikes. You could have skateboards, just whatever, anything you could think of going on around them, and they don't care at all about that. All they want to do is interact with their handler. That is a dog with really good engagement. When you're training a dog to behave well in real life environments, you're going to need a lot of engagement. You're going to need really good engagement from the dog. And there's a whole host of reasons as to why you need a lot of engagement, but the main one is that you can't teach the dog anything if they're not paying attention to you. It's the same thing with people. If you're trying to teach, whoever, literally anything, and they're spacing out in between every other word you say, and they're looking at their phone or doing something else and not focusing on what you're trying to teach them, they're never going to absorb that information. They're never going to learn anything. And dogs are absolutely no different. You have to have their attention first before you can teach them anything. The thing is, though, is once you have that attention, teaching behaviors to a dog is really, really easy, really, really straightforward. Really, engagement is the missing piece in a lot of people's training. They don't take engagement nearly far enough, or to the extent that they need to get a dog to listen to them, no matter where they are or what's going on around them. So what I'm thinking as of right now is that I'm going to separate engagement training into 3 different videos. Part 1, which is going to be this video, is going to be about teaching the very basic concept of engagement to the dog using food. We're going to keep it real simple and keep everything real easy for the dog, just so they can get a grasp on the idea of engaging or interacting with you. The second video, or part 2, will build on part 1. So we'll start to add in toys or food chase games. We'll add a little bit more intensity and generally just build on the engagement that we established in part 1. And then part 3 will be about adding distractions. I'll show you how to layer on distractions and then eventually work your way to real life environments where there's a bunch of crazy stuff going on, and show you how to practice engagement in those sorts of environments until the dog is giving you their undivided attention, no matter what's going on around them or where they're at. That's enough talking about it. Let's just get into it. So the name of the game of this engagement drill, or this particular method, is to simply mark and reinforce the dog for choosing to interact with you. So the moment that Nova gives me eye contact, the moment she starts moving towards me, the moment she shows any sort of willingness to interact with me, I'm saying good and then giving her a reward. I'm sure you've noticed that she's dragging a leash, and that's just to demonstrate what this looks like in the beginning stages, because for most people, I recommend that you have your dog drag a leash whenever you're first teaching this. But that all just depends on the type of environment that you're working in. If you're in an environment where it's pretty sterile and the likelihood of you getting surprised by anything is low, then you may not need a leash. And of course, the environment has to be safe to be off leash in. In this clip, I'm demonstrating how I want you guys to use the leash for this drill. And Nova was sticking to me a little bit too well. I couldn't get her to mess up, so I kind of set her up for failure. I don't recommend that you do this with your own dogs. This is just for the sake of demonstration. But what I'm doing is I'm tossing out a piece of food, and if she tries to go for it, I step on the leash to simply block her from getting the food. And that's what I want you guys to do with your leash when you're doing this drill. If your dog starts to get interested in something else and they start to move towards it, step on the leash. Block them from getting to reinforce themselves on that thing, whatever it may be. It could be a squirrel, it could be other people, it could be other dogs, whatever may pop up and surprise you, that's what the leash is for. It's just to keep the dog from completely bailing on you and reinforcing themselves on something other than you. In this clip, I wanted to demonstrate how if you have control over a distraction in the environment and you can keep your distraction from reinforcing the dog in any way, shape, or form whenever the dog decides to interact with it, you can just simply ignore the behavior. You don't necessarily have to block the dog from interacting with it. But that is only if the distraction does not reinforce the dog in any way, shape, or form. So here, once again, if Nova interacts with me and ignores the distraction, I'm still marking and rewarding her. If Nova goes to interact with my assistant will not give Nova any attention. No pets, no talking, no looking. She gets nothing for interacting with her. But Nova continues to get reinforced if she decides to interact with me. And what you'll notice as the clip goes along is that Nova learns to pay attention to the distraction less and less and pay attention to me more and more, to the point where Nova will completely ignore the distraction, almost as if it's not even there. We'll go over controlled and uncontrolled distractions in part 3 in a lot more detail, but for now what I want you guys to get out of this is that if you do not have control of the distractions and the environment, then step on the leash to block the dog from interacting with it. If you do have control of the distractions, then you can simply let the distraction ignore the dog and you continue to reinforce. And that will sort itself out. The dog will naturally gravitate to you and ignore the distraction. If your environment is calm and quiet and controlled, like a fenced-in backyard or a garage or some room in your house, you can do this off-leash. You can start by doing this off-leash. And my preference, if at all possible, is to do it off-leash, but not all environments are conducive to that, so use some common sense. The main principle is exactly the same. When the dog decides to interact with you, mark and reinforce it. Here I'm kind of turning the engagement game into a fun little interaction between Nova and I. Whenever the dog starts to really stick to you like glue, you can try to make it a game to try to peel them off of you. You know, run through things, move fast, move slow, turn in odd directions, spin in circles, and just try to shake the dog off of you. This will make the engagement game more fun for the dog and generally bring their motivation and their intensity up just a little bit.